Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Blueprint Podcast. Real people, real stories. Chasing dreams, overcoming obstacles. Come get inspired and take action. I know you're ready. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Blueprint. Today I have a friend, and also I do coach his son in baseball. So, it's a good topic to get into as well. But my friend, Michael Bresler. Michael, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Matt? Good to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, man. So just to get this started, I wanted to talk about, when I started learning about what you do and who you are, and you started telling me that you're in the AI field, you do consulting with AI and whatnot. I wanted to get you on the podcast. As I was just telling you, it's one of those topics that I don't want to say it's taboo, but it's like no one really knows where to start. Nobody really knows where this, the AI field is going, what it is, and what the possibilities are. So I really wanted to pick your brain about it because I'm more on the glass half full kind of guy. I think the AI technology, where it's going, is going to be really beneficial. Some people think it's going to be a detriment to the society as a whole. Why don't you explain what you do, who you are, and then I want to start picking your brain about the field you're in.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. So what I do is, I work right now with for-profit and nonprofit organizations. Predominantly, I look for mission-driven organizations, and I'll explain what that means. And what I do is my objective is to go into an organization and to empower them, empower the employees, empower the leadership to maximize every dollar and to free up staff time by bringing operational excellence and AI technology on top of that. And so the way that looks essentially is, I'm a big believer that it's about the people and then about the processes, right? So you have to have the good people and then you have to have the processes that help enable the people to be successful. And then on top of that, to really supercharge it, you would go ahead and put a tool like an AI, right? So since you mentioned baseball, my favorite analogy, because I coached Wellwood Little League for 10 years, right? I coached both boys, was no matter what age it was, I always inevitably had a parent come up to me and be like, hey, coach, what kind of gloves should I get? My kid doesn't catch well. What kind of bat should I get? My kid doesn't hit well, right? And it was always about, it doesn't matter what you have, if you really can't hit a Cat X bat. Back then it was a Cat 7, Cat 6. For the people watching don't know, those are $400 or $500 bats, right? Aluminum space grade, right? Ridiculous bats. And so my thing was guys, in order to catch the ball, you just got to learn how to catch, and then the glove will help you be better. The right size, all that is really critical. And with the bat, it's the same way. If you can't make contact, having a really great bat may not only not help them, but may actually distort, because the big barrel bats, it makes it harder for them to hit sometimes if they're not good at hitting, right? So it's the same thing. So I bring that baseball technology up. The same thing with golf clubs, right? A Tiger Woods will still beat you with bad golf clubs. If you're not a good golfer, a good pair of golf clubs is not going to help you. So it's the same thing with technology and AI, right? If you're not good at what you do, or you're not an expert at what you do, AI will only do so much for you. And the people who are able to use AI, who are the experts in the field, that's where AI is going to exponentially help them. But it starts with having the expertise and the knowledge and the good process, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to automate bad process, because automating bad process is just going to make just build more chaos around.
Yeah. That actually kind of reminds me of a book, Good to Great is one of my favorite books by Jim Allen. And he talks really just about that people get caught up with hiring people with the best credentials, Harvard grad, Yale grad, but rather than looking at, if you put the best people in place, right, they may not be in the right position, but they're the right person for your organization. It starts by having the right people, not necessarily the right credentials or the highest credentials, and once you have the right people, then you can start building the system around that. So I think that you explaining that is starting to, it makes more sense to me now. And so one of the words we talk a lot about at CR3 is streamlining. We want to streamline things to make things as simple as possible. we're starting to incorporate a lot of the technologies that you're talking about, new CRMs,
Mhm.
pulling reports that rather than having employees that have to spend 2-3 hours a day doing it, you can
Yeah.
pull it immediately. So really, like, I want to hear your process. So you come into an organization and you find the right person, you find the right people, you make sure that they have everything in place. Um, where do you start by, like, what sort of things do you want to put in place to streamline those processes for them?
Yeah, sure. So the first step generally is around discovery, right? So we do some discovery. So what that means is sitting down with stakeholders and leadership to understand what their overall objectives are. If they have a strategic plan, that's really great. Like if they know where they're going in 5 years, that's really helpful. And then the idea is to then tie in how process and technology can help enable them to achieve those things faster and smarter, right? And then coming up with some of, like, then digging in a little more around what are the things that, oh my God, if you had more staff, which most people can't just hire more people, right? What else could you do more of? Like, what is more important to do? And then the other thing is, what are some of the pain points? Like you mentioned, pulling reports, right? So like that's a pain point. If you're taking 3 hours a day to run reports, that's a pain point. What could that person be doing with those 3 hours, right? And that starts
Right.
the conversation of shifting a lot of the culture into also a growth mindset, because the challenge you have is that there's a lot of people who are scared of change. It's not just AI, but like when the internet happened, like a mobile phone, like paying online. I mean, it's just like change is hard for people in general,
Right.
right? And so the idea is to get them really thinking about what the potential is and how this could help them. So it's not just about freeing up time. It's not just about, like in your example, taking those 3 hours and, let's say, doing more customer relationship, which is probably the most critical thing for businesses that they can do, like build more relationships with customers and clients. But also, if you're not pulling that report, 3 hours a day, maybe that means that the person can go on vacation and not have to pull the report from vacation. Or maybe that means the person could leave early to go watch their kid play baseball
Right.
because you're not in front of their desk pulling a report for 3 hours, right? So there's the idea of like helping to start minimize burnout, right? And then also being able to shift some of that work so that you truly are spending your time doing the most value-driven work possible.
Yeah, one of my again, I was sort of one of those people that were at first pessimistic about AI and um, what it was. I thought it was going to be something that was going to take all our jobs, but then I
Mhm.
started actually using it, and I realized no, it's not going to take our jobs. It's actually this is making my life so much easier. I was a guy that was like adamant not to use ChatGPT, but now
Mhm.
ChatGPT is like I use that every single day because it just makes my life 10 times easier. It's not that it's doing my job for me. It's just helping me organize it in a timely fashion so I
Yeah.
can focus on the stuff that's more important. So like again, and this is something, you have you have a son in college, you have a son in high school. Um, I think some schools are scared of like what ChatGPT is going to do. Like, oh, you have to write an essay. Don't use ChatGPT. I'm the type of person now. It's like, no, use ChatGPT, but learn to use it the right way.
Mhm.
So, for example, I write a lot of I write a lot of stuff down to send to our sales employees
Yeah.
for example. Um, but what I do now is I learned that I can write basically in just a big block all of my thoughts down of what I want to say, tell ChatGPT how I want to structure it, and it does it for me. And it's literally saving me an hour and a half of my
Mhm.
time. Um, so stuff like that, where I think we shouldn't be so scared to actually use it. And it's probably something that we should start teaching in middle school, high school, college, because I think not only is it going to help our businesses maximize their time better, but if our businesses can maximize their time better, society as a whole, what's that going to do in all of our businesses are freeing up time
Yeah.
and can actually focus on the stuff that's important. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on how we can learn to start using stuff like ChatGPT, or should we be teaching our kids about this? And what are you seeing some pushback from employees when you're going into their office and telling them, hey, we should utilize stuff like
Yeah.
ChatGPT?
So the first thing I'll start with is that if you go back to history through any technological change, or even any change in general, there's always been pushback on everything, right? So like go back to when cars were invented, right? The horse and buggy, people thought cars were a fad. And this is all documented stuff, right? My favorite quote is 1937, the CEO and chairman of the board of Fox 20th Century, right, said, nobody would ever watch a wood box for more than 1 hour a day. Okay. Like when a wood box is the TV, right? Well, like think about it. People have a TV in their pocket.
Right.
And every time like they have a free second, like even if they're driving, they're watching something, right? So and my point is that like with the internet, they, you know, Newsweek said it was a fad. And then, you know, when Musk was trying to start Tesla, you know, a lot of people said it was never going to happen, right? Like the reality is that my belief is that the people who created the world that we live in today, like what I mean by that is like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and the founders of Google and YouTube and like, you know, the world we live in today, right? Like that's the world we're kind of in, like social media, internet, technology. They're just like us. Bill Gates has nothing on us. I don't think he's any smarter than us. You know, I don't think any of them are. I think the one thing that they have a little different than 99% of the people is the discipline, the hustle, the grind, and the knowledge and belief that failure is good and that will get you success. Because most people
also got, by the way, don't forget, they also, and they talk about this, they got super lucky. Like Bill Gates,
right? They got lucky. No,
he grew up next to Washington University that had the only at that time computer system in the country.
Right. So
I think 3 hours. So
there's definitely luck. I mean, luck. There's definitely a lot of luck when it comes to success around timing. And it's not to say these guys aren't smart, but how many people do we know are sitting around and like they have an idea for a business, and like for 50 years they're just going to basically be on their deathbed and be like, what happens if I would have started that business, right? And so the difference between like them and many other people is that they did it. Like he dropped out of school. Like Musk, he's crazy in a good way, bad way, but like he went against the grain, right? Every single one of those people had an idea and they pushed for it. So Bezos actually talks about his story of how he decided to leave his full-time job to start Amazon, right? His story basically is that everyone thought that selling books online was the stupidest idea in the world because you had Barnes and Noble, right? Like, how would you, right? And so his story basically is he spent 8 hours walking around with like some of his mentors in Central Park in New York. And basically this idea is basically what he calls the regret minimalization framework. And what it is that every decision you have to make is a big decision. When you're like 85 years old, imagine if you're 85 years old, you're on your deathbed, and ask yourself the question, will I regret trying it if it fails, right? And then the next question is, will I regret if I don't try it? And and that's the kind of question that people don't always ask themselves because we're scared. But what we want to do is like, people talk about this, that like, I don't know how this really is, but they say like when you're on your deathbed, like the ghosts of your regrets are around your bed. And the idea is to minimalize the number of those ghosts, like all the, like, because so many people have ideas. And so, anyway, so I'm starting with that just because it feeds into the whole idea of like AI and being scared. So the media loves to basically provide this narrative that AI is going to take away jobs, right? Technology is going to be a horrible thing. We're going to have like a dystopian society. And people aren't like taking initiative to go and look at AI themselves and to say, oh, how could this actually help me? How does it work? And how could it enable me to do more in my life, right? So I think that's a really important point. Because we're listening to the people who we think are like the fathers of our society, but they really don't know anything more. Right. Okay, and so then the ideas around AI and the fear around AI is that, you know, of course, there's always a chance that technology is not going to work out for the best. I mean, I could argue that social media is a terrible thing. Right. It's probably promoted a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression because, you know, you look at Facebook and you see someone post something on vacation, and it looks like the perfect family. And I promise you, not the perfect family. I'll tell you one thing: my kids hate when we post on social media. And it's because, you know, we're on this vacation, right? And like the morning is probably really difficult and we're all like angry at each other. But like literally my wife's like, let's take a picture. And then everyone's like, yay, like we love each other, we're happy.
Right.
Everyone's like, oh my God, you had the best vacation. It's like, what they don't know is that literally like 10 minutes before I was gonna like leave them all there. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So all right. So we could argue that, you know, things could be bad, but I think with AI, there's like a really big opportunity for us to get back to the things that we love to do. So like these kind of conversations, like human relationships. So what I've seen with employers with employees is that number one, their biggest challenge right now is they have no idea how to start. Like, how do I bring this into my organization? Like, what do I do with it?
Right.
And for the most part, none of them were around when the internet, you know, they weren't the ones that brought internet into their organizations, right? Like we kind of lived through the start of internet, but we, for the most part, most leadership now who is still in leadership, like is already retired, right? The ones who dealt with the internet, because internet was the same thing for us, right? It was like bring a new computer in, like, you know, at least with AI, we have a phone, we have technology. With computers and internet, it was like, so to get on AOL, I need to have a dial-up modem and I need a computer now. Yeah. Right. That was a big change for people to learn a new device.
And to be fair, in 2000, they thought the world was going to end because it was
going to yes, they did think the world was going to end. That's a great point. So where we are right now, if we want to think about it, is we are in like 1997, 1998. Right. I know you weren't around for that yet, but for the rest of us, like I remember that distinctly. I was in high school. I learned Netscape and Magellan and like all these like fun internet things. And back then we also had to use a Dewey Decimal System. So that's another example. Like, so we get into education, right? So for education has always changed through every technology. So back in the day, right, you had to use a Dewey Decimal System to look up books in the library and take photocopies with a dime. Right. And then you do a bibliography because you had to say like what page I got it from. Even when the internet was out, we couldn't use internet because internet was a secondary source. Right. Nowadays, internet is a primary source. You know, kids don't have to go to the library. They don't have to find books. They just find a page on LexisNexis or whatever, and that's their resource. Right. So that has changed. Right. So someone could argue that, yes, has that shifted like the ability to research like at the library stack? I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure. But kind of think about that type of change, which is more minimal. And you go back a little farther, like the calculator. How did the calculator change people, you know, like learning math, right? And so what I think has to happen, number one, is we have to stop talking about AI as cheating and start talking about how to leverage AI to help with the kids to have better thinking, right? And to essentially reevaluate how we assess children. So when the calculators came out, you know, we now test our kids on things calculators can't do, right? Like the highest level of math. Like you don't test the kids on the things that the TI-85 does. That's like, you know, right? But you're also teaching them like AI is a tool. So just like a calculator, if you don't know how to do math, the calculator will just give you like nothing numbers, right? Very similar. It's like, you know, for those of us who learn how to drive a car without a rear view backup camera, right? Like Ami just got his license. If he, you know, when he was learning how to park, having a camera didn't help him learn how to park because he had to actually know how to park. Like the camera doesn't, it only just shows you the back. It's like a mirror, right?
Exactly.
So AI is a tool, right? I think that's the first thing that people have to think about. AI is a tool. And so when it comes to education, I think that longer term, or even it's being tested right now, like in private schools in Texas, is that AI is going to allow us to have every student have access to like 24/7 personalized tutors that are AI driven, right? That's going to be an amazing thing. That's going to allow teachers to do more teaching, less administrative work, and be able to have a teacher, you know, support different levels of children in a school, right? So that's an amazing opportunity. The question is how you get there. So that then gets into kind of your question, which is how do we get from like where we are today to being able to feel good about having kids have like an AI generated tutor that hopefully would be in the likeness of their teacher, right? And so if we work backwards, you know, before the tutors can happen, which again, this is change management, like not everyone's going to abide by this. But if we do it early enough and intentionally enough, the step before that would be, you know, okay, so we need to make sure that the parents and the teachers are on board and understand like what AI does and how it works, and that we're all on the same page that AI is not cheating. We're on the same page that teachers now have to rethink how they test, right? So like If AI can help you write, are you gonna, have a take-home essay or a research paper, right? Like that's a question to ask. Or if writing is important to communicate, maybe you're now gonna have, in-class writing assignments, right? It's whatever is important, right? Like we don't even learn cursive. Kids don't learn cursive anymore, right? So it's just things kind of go away. But in order to get teachers to recognize what AI is and what it can do, and to come up with the proper AI policies, right, for the students, because ultimately we need to teach the kids how to use AI, because we need to have kids be AI ready. So just like, like when I was coming up, right, we had to put on our resumes that we were proficient in Microsoft Office. You don't put that anymore because everyone's supposed to know Microsoft Office. They all know PowerPoint. AI will be that, right? So my son in college, when he graduates in 4 years, even he's like looking at co-ops now for work. He's already putting on his resume that he knows how to use ChatGPT. He knows how to program a GPT. He knows how to do this, right? Employers are looking for that. So we have to have our kids be AI ready. So we have to teach the kids how to use AI properly. We need to have the teachers really learn how to use AI to see how it helps them, which will basically be their ability to have the light bulb go off to say, wow, this isn't cheating. This is actually helping my life. And now I don't have to do the things that I don't want to do. It's the same thing for a student, right?
Yeah.
Because are people who are using AI, are they asking themselves, like, am I cheating by getting a PowerPoint done faster? Like, is that cheating at work, right? No, it's not. You're just being more efficient, right? So kids are being more efficient. So, teaching the teachers how to use AI properly to really free up their time, essentially is the first step, I believe, to getting, and it's not going to happen over years. I mean, it could happen over months of time, but it's just being very intentional to get the teachers to recognize what it does, to then get them to realize that, oh, I need to start rethinking, because just like they're going to rethink their own job of like what they're doing with AI, just like you're thinking your job, right? Like back in the day, you might need like a sales guy who's going to write sales content, and now you're using AI. So your sales guy is now going to go out and sell more.
Yeah. I mean, even if you think about like research papers, you brought up a really good point, actually, that I haven't thought of, is like when you were in college, you had to go to the library and pull books and peer-reviewed studies, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Now, like, let's say you're writing a research paper on what kind of economy is the best for a large nation like the United States, right? And you could ask ChatGPT, is a capitalistic economy or is it a socialistic economy? Which one's better? Right. And it might give you an opinion. Or as a teacher, you could say, well, I want you to ask ChatGPT about different economies throughout the centuries of what has worked and what hasn't. So you could look up, what did Mikhail Gorbachev say about the socialistic society during the Soviet Union? And then you could look up, well, what did FDR say about the American economic system? And then you could start actually putting together a research paper. But all it did was, again, I love the word streamline. It just streamlined getting that information easier. And you still have to say, hey, this came from ChatGPT, and ChatGPT pulled it from this source. And so I think you're largely right, is teaching. If we make these resources sort of like a fringe topic to talk about, then that's exactly what it's going to be. Like we won't utilize this. But if we openly talk about it now and the right way to use it, if we teach the right way to use these things, well, then I think you're largely right that society as a whole is going to be a lot better off.
Yeah. The irony of AI is that, so one of the things I do when I work with organizations is, right, I look at process, and generally speaking, organizations engage with me because they think that the AI is going to solve all their problems, right? So they're always disappointed when I say to them, guys, like, before you hire me, AI is not a magic wand. So if you think it is, like, we're not going to be the right fit, because I'm going to tell you other things that you have to do that you're not going to want to hear, right? And so really what happens is when you start to work on that streamlining thing, right, there's really 4 solutions to any problem, right? The first one is asking the question, like, why are you even doing that? Like, you want to streamline a process, but you're doing the process for 20 years. You need to even do it anymore, right? It's like organizations that are, taking checks. I mean, like, oh, how do we automate check processing? Well, I don't know. Do you need checks? Maybe you should go online payment, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is just, identifying, like, okay, does your system that you have already do that? And you're just not using the tool to the best of ability. So people have said to me, like, oh, can you use AI to streamline how you do calendar invites? Okay, did you know that Outlook does calendar invites? Did you know that like you can look at a shared calendar,
Yeah.
right? Like, no. Okay, well, you don't need AI to do that. You just need to use Microsoft Outlook better, right? The third one is there are some big, like, hairy problems out there that AI may solve as far as just a band-aid, but they're not going to be like the fix. So for instance, you mentioned you're looking at CRMs, right? Like, so yeah, yes. Could you keep all your customers on a Google sheet and then integrate with Make to have emails go out? You could do that. And I've done that for my business, right? But I'm a small shop. But if you have thousands of customers, you're going to want to get a proper CRM, right? And so I've been in organizations where they say, oh, we're doing XYZ manual process. It's hundreds of hours a month. Can AI help? And it's like, no, you actually need like an HR system. You actually need a CRM. You actually, like, you have 200 people. You have 300 people. Like, you can't be doing the mom and pop process. So then AI is the fourth solution. It's not really an order of things, but generally it's like people have this impression that AI is going to be the solution for everything. And I leave AI for last generally because, I don't want to automate bad process. So like before you automate, you have to ask the question, like, do we have to do this? Do you even have to do this anymore?
Right.
Why do you do this? And most people say, well, that's how I was trained. Well, I mean, that's not really an answer.
Yeah.
Part of the conversation is facilitating people starting to think about, wow, that's a great question. Like, why am I still doing that? So I give you, like, this is one story I heard, which I think really reflects this, which was, it's this story. It's in one of these books, like a Jim Collins type of book. I have to remember the book it was in. But it was a story where there was a mother making a roast, and she cuts off the edges of the roast, right? And the child says, why do you cut the edges off of the roast? And the mother's like, I don't know, that's how grandma taught me, right? And so go ask grandma. So kid goes to grandma, and grandma said, and says, well, so how do you, and again, you're cutting off the edges of the roast. Grandma, why do you do that? That's how your great grandmother taught me. Go ask her. So she goes to great grandmother. Why do you cut off the ends of the roast? And she says, well, because back then we were poor, we had a small pan.
Yeah.
And the roast didn't fit. So we had to cut the ends off and like put them on the sides, right?
So now you're wasting the roast.
So, but it's like this whole, like, they had a small pan, so they did it, and that kind of became like, and that's kind of how legacy and generational ideas happen, is like customs, like all these questions, like, why do we do X? Well, it's like what my father taught me, so my grandfather taught me, and so technology is the same way, process is the same way. If you're in a newer organization and you're building new, right, you're scaling up very differently. If your organization has been around for 100 years, right, like, you probably haven't really evaluated and streamlined process. And so the work you're doing is most likely work that was done 30 years the same way. And so the first question to ask yourself is not, can AI just solve my problem? It's like, why do I even do it to begin with?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that. I'm going to bring in a baseball analogy. I always say my real profession is being a hitting coach.
You do a good job, I'll tell you that.
But what you brought up is exactly what I've been trying to teach is everybody knows what you're supposed to do when you hit, right? You've heard hit the inside of the baseball, right? Get your hands on top of the ball.
Yeah.
Right? Make sure you're driving your hips to the ball. Everybody could tell you that. So we're learning what to do. I'm trying to teach you the why. And I want the why to be, I'll tell you the why, but I also want you to figure out the why. And that's largely, I think, what you're saying is these organizations, everybody knows what to do. Everybody knows, your job at an organization is to make money, right? Your job is to come in from 9 to 5, and you're supposed to keep bookkeeping from all different sects of your company. But the question is why, and I think that's something that gets overlooked that you're bringing up, and I think it's really impressive that you're teaching these organizations is what is the why. We first need to figure out the why, and then we can figure out, okay, now we can start incorporating some of these streamlined processes. Here's a really good example, and I was actually talking to Don Wright, who's our head baseball coach, about this the other day. Is we were actually talking about Ami, your son Ami, about coming to the year. Don's whole plan for Ami was he's a stud pitcher. He's going to be our ace.
Yeah.
And he wasn't necessarily known as a hitter. And what did he do? He was going literally after practice every single day. Not only was he getting swings in practice, but you were taking him to a baseball facility to get more swings, right?
Yeah.
So Ami figured out his why, like what he needed to do, because he didn't just want to be a pitcher. He wanted to be known as a hitter. So throughout the course of the season, you saw his average like ticking up. He's now leading the team in average almost. And like he also went from barely hitting ninth to basically hitting second. And so you need those types of people in your organization that you can trust, that aren't just coming in 9 to 5 every day, barely getting by, collecting the paycheck and going home. Right? Part of an organization is people who are going to say, I understand what my job is here, and I need to be able to adapt and figure out how I can be better at my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not only is your job, Michael, like going into an organization and teaching them the why, teaching them how to streamline their process, but also figuring out the type of people they need in these organizations. Are they willing to put in the work even though they're not getting paid? They're on salary, but they're not getting paid to stay after hours. Well, that's the type of people you want in order to adapt to this new technological change.
Yeah. I mean, what I've found, interestingly enough, is that the majority of people put in the work. Like they put in the work, they love the organization, right? It's just a question of somewhere along the line, the why disappeared.
Right.
Right. And now it's not just reintroducing it. It's asking the leadership, okay, like what is the new why? Like what is the why? Because we don't like, mission and vision is a funny thing because it's like, on a website, it's on like maybe an office hallway. But like, that they don't really talk about those things. Some organizations that are very like I said, I enjoy working with like the mission driven organizations, the ones that aren't only about like, let's say shareholder value, right? But like some of the nonprofits who really are out there, like everybody there truly is believing that they have a hand in helping society, right? But like they're also taking direction from like maybe an old school kind of thinking as far as what success means, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. Like what why is and what success means are very similar, and they have to be very in tune. When it comes to whether it's baseball or anything, like what does success mean, right? Like what is the metric that the players on the baseball team are trying to strive for, right? Like you mentioned moving from the 9 spot to the 2 spot, right? That was never the goal, right? Because that's just a byproduct of doing a good job. Like when you're in your sales piece, like when you have your metrics dashboard, you're not looking at, let's say, revenue numbers. You're looking at the number of sales calls per day, because the number of sales calls per day is what's going to drive your revenue numbers, right? So you're looking at the metrics that actually matter. So it's the work outside. It's like it is just putting in the work in and getting the work done. And so that's, I think, what we're also trying to figure out is your why and then what success means, right? So success isn't like filling the seat. Success isn't like showing up, right? Success isn't like, oh, you got in the lineup, right? Whatever it is, right? Success is about like, what are the metrics that you can measure yourself on that will essentially help you achieve like that bigger mission and vision.
Right. Yeah, man, that makes a lot of sense. And that is, especially with your, where you are in your profession. And it's interesting because you probably had to adapt as well. Like you had to figure out your why. I don't know where you started. I mean, have you always been an entrepreneur and a consultant the way you are now?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it could 20 years ago, I mean, maybe you didn't envision yourself teaching about technology and incorporating and figuring out the why so you could then incorporate the right things to streamline, right? So,
well, yeah, I mean, my story is interesting. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur.
mm-hmm.
And that's why when I talk about the regret minimization framework, it really is from the heart, because I only came to the realization like 2-3 years ago that, or I should say 2 or 3 years ago was the time where I realized that if I didn't do something about it, I was going to regret just living the life I was living. Not that the life I was living was bad. I mean, having a job, executive level role, like you're able to pay tuition, right? Like go on vacation, right. And like, it's not a bad life. I mean, there's really no complaints. but I always felt like I was put here for something more. And so like, so my journey was, I mean, from the beginning of time, I've always been very keen on identifying like operational challenges, and it's because it's not just identifying them; they bug me, right? Like it's not just when I work at a job, but one time my bag was lost between Melbourne, Australia, a stop in LA, and Dulles Airport, and the Dulles Airport and bag wasn't there. And I go to the woman, and she says to me, "All right, so we found your bag. It's still in LA. We'll get it to you by tomorrow." And I said, "Why tomorrow? Why not today?" And she said, "Well, once it gets to Dulles, it has to fly to O'Hare to go to BWI because, O'Hare is, because basically there's no flight from you. They put it on a plane to get it to you." So I said to her, like, that makes no sense. Like, why do you do it that way? Well, I thought the system's set up. But like Baltimore's an hour north. Like you could put it on a van. Right. And there are all companies now that actually deliver your luggage for you. So why are you sending it to Chicago? Right. So ultimately, like with that one, I emailed a bunch of times. I ended up talking to a customer service rep. They told me they were going to like log it as an enhancement. And then when they lost my kid's bag, like years later, it showed up at our house 2 hours later on a van. Right. So I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying that I see things and they bother me. And that's why my brain works the way it does. I don't have to necessarily put in a lot of effort to go into an organization and see problems, because I see like everywhere I go, I see problems. It's kind of like it's sort of painful in some ways. My wife's the same way. Like we're too aware sometimes of things, but my background is I've always done operational excellence work. I've always worked for organizations because I've always been like scared to bet on myself. That's really the reality of things. And then when my father-in-law passed away in 2012 from brain cancer, that was like my first, like, a lot of times, pain and tragedy is what drives change, right? And that was my first shift of like, okay, I no longer want to work for like a 40,000 person company. I want to work for like a small company. So like my step in was I worked for a Baltimore-based company called the Agora Companies. That was like a lot smaller, kind of like a more mom and pop feel. Because I wanted to get my hands into something that was more like, okay, it's smaller. I can do more, provide more impact. And I was there for 11 years. And then, through other things in the family that were happening, and then really October 7th, then got me really thinking about my legacy. Like, what was I doing on this world? Like, there are people dying, there's horrible things happening, and I'm just like going to work. Like, how can I really help society, right? Yeah. And so I had the realization that with my knowledge, and this also went along with the fact that I just finished up my term as chairman of the board, about to fill the congregation, was with my knowledge of, because I've been lay leadership in nonprofit for like 20 years. So with my knowledge in lay leadership and nonprofit work, and the realization that like, God, nonprofits could really use this kind of help, right? But people only focused on the for-profit side. No one really pays attention to the nonprofit side. And the fact that like, I needed to do something else. It was when I decided to essentially step away and start my own practice, like really bet on myself, like finally bet on myself.
Yeah.
With the belief that like, I've identified a challenge in the world, right, which I'm now working to solve. But I'll tell you the other thing, which is funny about children, is children hold you accountable, which is fun. So the other reason why I ended up leaving, I'll give my son Yoni credit, was I always told him as he was coming up that like the reason why, I didn't pay attention to the internet was I was too young. Like I always said, I wish I was older when the internet happened. I would have like had a startup. As he got older, he realized that like, the guys who started Google, Sergey Brin, they're only 2 years older than me, right? Mm-hmm. And so he sort of realized. So then I said to him, so when ChatGPT came out, in November of 2022 was when my brain kind of clicked, and I was like, all right, here's this AI. I've been in AI already for like 3 years before that, but it was the first time that a product came out that was consumer facing. Before that, AI was all built into other systems, right? That's how I used it. And so so I made a comment to him like, oh, I was really thinking about like starting an AI thing, but I just don't know, like when the internet happened, I was too young. Now I'm too old. And he's like, Daddy, the reason why you didn't do it with the internet was because you were scared. Bet on yourself, man.
Wow.
He was what? He's 19 now, so he was like, I guess 16 when that happened. And it like, and so between that and like again, kids holding you accountable, I'm not giving him all the credit. My wife has been very supportive of it, change and things.
Yeah.
And the kids have been supportive, but it was really October 7th really got me thinking, like, why am I on this earth? And then I was like really thinking about the whole Bezos thing, like, one day, like, we're all gonna die, and did we do everything we wanted to do and needed to do in our life? Right? I think that's the question everyone has to ask themselves. It's kind of morbid. And that's what got me thinking. So it was more like the idea of like, man, what can I do for like the Jewish people? Like for the first time ever in my life, I was like thinking, God, like, what can I do for the people that I'm part of? Because before that, like, I'm of course I'm Jewish, but like I never really felt such a strong tie. Honestly, like not not a tie enough where like it was so painful to see that news and to like follow along, and just like you felt like your brothers and sisters were like being killed in a hostage, so that's kind of like everyone has that story. And so when you talk about why, right, that's the thing about why, right? So like every entrepreneur also needs to have a why.
Yeah.
Right. The why can't be money. And that's the challenge that I had for so many years, was I was always chasing dollars. That's all I really cared about for a long time. And for the last couple of years, I've shifted my mindset to, I just want to do good work with good people. That's all I really care about. Right.
And the money will follow.
I have bills. And yeah, sometimes I stress out at night. I'm like, oh my God, right? How am I going to pay for this? But I'm so much happier because I'm chasing my why. Like I have a why. My why is very clear to me. It's not green, right? It's really trying to add value. And it's also another thing with the why is when you lead with abundance, it also is tremendous for your life, right? Like I think in the business world, there's a challenge of when you're trying to make your money, right? Your metrics are a lot of times based on your personal performance, which also makes it so that you want to just be like in your own little shell. You don't want to share. You're like, it's the whole idea of like a zero-sum game, right? But I've come to learn that this book I read in graduate school. So I have a master's degree in negotiation and conflict management, but the first book we read was a book by Uri and Fisher called Getting to Yes. And Getting to Yes was basically a book about win-win. And the metaphor in the preface of the book was basic to explain what win-win means, was that, two brothers are fighting over an orange. And so you would think that the idea would be split the orange in half. But with a win-win, it's having a dialogue to say, well, why do you want the orange versus why do you want the orange? And the story basically is that one brother wanted the pulp for juice and one wanted the rind of the orange to bake a cake, right? So now that one gets the whole rind, that one gets all the pulp, versus in a zero-sum game, you're either going to take the whole orange and throw away what you don't want, or you're going to split it in half.
Right.
So.
That makes a lot of sense. And I was actually going to bring that up. Well, there's two things. Now I'm blanking on this book that I read, but he said exactly that, is like, there's no necessarily quote unquote winning a business. Like there's not going to be one man that at the end of his life, one business, like, oh, he's the number one business person in the world. No, like everybody can win a business, right? There's enough for everybody. But the other thing I was going to say that you brought up, and it's a theory that I heard that I really liked, is like when you die, you brought up the death, which is kind of morbid, but it's important. It's like when you die, are people going to go to your grave, your tombstone, or look at your obituary and see, oh, Michael Bresler had a lot of money?
Yeah.
No, what they're going to see is Michael Bresler, great husband, great father, great brother, helped a lot of people in business, right? That's how you're going to be remembered. It's like the money will follow, but it's what did you do to get that money? If you're just following, as you said, the dollars, when you're following dollars, a lot of times you can hurt a lot of people because all you care about is following dollars. When you're following something that you believe in, right? And it's for example, I mean, it doesn't just necessarily have to be an entrepreneurship. Like if you believe in helping students, like your wife is a teacher.
Yep.
And like she's been a teacher for a long time. Like since I remember she was a teacher when I was in at the fellow when I was 4. Like obviously that's one of the things. Like, is there a ton of money in being a teacher? Not necessarily, but it's the most important job you can have, right? Yeah. And if you believe in what you're doing, then you'll largely be satisfied. And again, you'll find a way to make it work. And people, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to figure out, like, are you doing this because you believe in a cause? Or are you doing this, as you said, this is a great way to sum it up. Are you doing this just because you're trying to chase a dollar? And the people that try to chase a dollar never make it as an entrepreneur. You really do have to believe in your mission and what you're doing. So before we finish up, I want to ask you two questions.
Sure.
One, as what would your biggest piece of advice be when learning to adapt with this technological change? And also, what would your just biggest piece of advice be just in general as like an entrepreneur who I mean, the knowledge you've shared today is clearly like, it's unbelievable. I'm sure you could probably give 1,000 different pieces of advice, but like your number one piece of advice just in general for, improving your life as a whole.
Yeah, sure. So I think to be able to shift with technology is, I think, just very simply just lean in to discomfort, right? Just try it, like dip your toes in and just try it. For anything, just test it out yourself. Don't listen to other people and what they're telling you. Just like get the answers, like, basically trust but verify is that whole concept, right? It's really with everything, someone, again, with baseball, it's not a thing, like, there's always someone telling you how to change something, right? Like Ami pitches and there's like these people, like whatever, these people are going to him and being like, oh, the reason why you're off is because your foot. It's like, I'm like, listen to your coach, listen to like some guy. but like at the same time, it's like, so if you want to take that advice, go back to the tunnel, right? And like go and like, let's throw some balls and see, like, does that actually help you, right? So taking advice, thinking about it, trying it, being open to those things. But with AI specifically, it's, just like if you have an idea, like you want to plan a vacation, or you want to, like, I don't know, figure out like a plan for batting practice, right? Like, AI can help you with those things, right? Just to be clear, the disclaimer with AI though is, so AI is only as good as the person using it. AI can be wrong, right? So you have to verify what AI gives you. So it's not like a full on like resource or reference. But like I like that with AI is that AI knows everything, but it knows nothing. And what that means is that AI has been trained on the world of data, but it also knows, like, has Reddit and Facebook, all this other stuff, right? That may or may not be true.
Yeah.
So it knows everything, but it knows nothing, meaning like it knows nothing, like it has no idea about context or about like what success means or what even right means. So that's where the human comes in, is so the human being able to validate, what is correct. It's like, for instance, you mentioned your first example, writing, sales scripts, right? So if you know how to sell, then you know what the script should be. You've essentially had AI help you get to where you want to go, but you know what success looks like, right? AI is not going, like, anyone who doesn't know sales, AI will not help you write a sales script. You go, hey, I own a company, I want you to write a sales script for me, right? Like, it's going to take the world of sales scripts, and no one knows your business like you, and no one knows you like you, right? We all sell a different way. As far as like, like I'm very much more about, like, I'm about relationship sales. Like, I don't really ever sell anything. I just talk to people, right? So that's the first thing, is just dip your toes in. Don't be scared. Just try it. And then I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is that, they say that the days are long, but the years are short. I would say cherish every win, appreciate every win. Don't get bogged down on the big stuff. I think, like, the challenge in the world today is that we've forgotten about incremental wins, right? Like, we were just in Columbus together, right? Like, could you have driven home and said, oh my God, we should have won the championship? Yeah, you could have. But at the same time, the whole team was so happy. Like, they had shown up, they played these different teams that they'd never seen before. They competed. They left with a reputation that they're going to be like the team to deal with in the coming years. You had 8th graders who were hitting. I mean, you had an 8th grader who shut down the number 2 team. Yeah. I'm saying, like, these are wins, right? Like, every strikeout, Ami threw 10 strikeouts in that one game, right?
That's crazy.
Every strikeout, every strike was a win. Like, everything was a win. Every, like, throw out at second was a win, right? So even if you lose the game, like, you still were a better player when you ended the game than when you started the game. And that's the idea. So what I've learned in my life is that with the chasing of dollars, was every time I got a promotion, because if you look at my LinkedIn, I mean, when I worked at Broadridge, I got a promotion every year for like 8 years, and like, right. But I was always chasing. Like, I didn't know, I didn't have a why. I was just like, all right, I got my promotion, I got a raise. Okay, great. What's my next? Okay, next promotion. I never sat for a moment and appreciated that, wow, I just got a promotion, right? And so, and I think that translates into now as someone who is facing like empty nester, you know, kind of, because, you know, I mean, our youngest is basically going to be going to college in a couple of years. Is really, it feels into the family side. It's not just about incremental wins for business or for sports, but it's just about like cherishing every moment of your life, right? Like spending the time with and that's why I'm big on the AI around minimalizing, you know, burnout, but also freeing up time to spend more time with family.
Right.
At the end of the day, like I'll tell you, like, you know, people who, you know, they have little kids, and they're just like, Michael, it must be so nice to like take a walk with your wife on Shabbat, or Michael, must be so nice your house is clean. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I miss being woken up by the kids in the morning. I miss, like, you know, now that Ami has a license, like I miss having to take him somewhere, right? Like, you miss it, right? You miss like having the toys on the floor. You miss like having all those things, because like there's a certain point when they become adults and now they were bugging you, like, Daddy, like, they used to bug me all the time. And I say bug because that's how I felt sometimes. Like, Daddy, can you play baseball with me outside? Right? And I'd be like, oh, I'm too tired. My knee hurts. I work. Right? And I learned probably like 5 or 6 years ago, as I started seeing Yoni get older and he was with his friends and he like was never around to play. Right. And Ami asks me, I'm always like, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because I'm like, it's not my last chance, but it's like, you kind of take advantage that they're always going to be around that age wanting you.
Right.
And then at a certain point, like, I mean, look, they're going to be adults. They're going to be on their own. And at some point, hopefully they'll be grandchildren. And then you can kind of like play with those kids. Right. But I think what I want to tell people advice wise is not even like business advice. It's just more like, you know, cherish every moment.
One day you'll wish you had one more baseball game.
Celebrate every success, you know, because life just goes so fast. And like one day you're going to be looking back at that and you're going to be regretting. So you just want to minimize your regret, like minimize, you know, like, oh, I wish I played with my kids more. So for me, I've gone to almost every game of my kids when they play sports. Right. I missed one because I was presenting AI at a workshop, but I've been to every game this season. When Yoni, when he was on the bench, every game. And I would just, you know, every game, just be there, support, because it matters. Yeah. You know, it matters to be there. And so, and the same thing goes with your spouse. It really just everybody, right? I mean, parents. I'm not such a great son, but I try.
Yeah, well, Michael, this was awesome, man. And again, if you have time, let's get you back on here soon.
I would love to. I had a great time with you.
Great, yeah, man.
Talk some baseball.
Yeah, we talk some baseball next time. Yeah, but hey, like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put your socials everywhere where people can find you down in the link on YouTube, and it's gonna be on Instagram and Facebook. But for the listeners that actually listen, there's gonna be people who have questions who want to connect. Like, reach out to Michael. He's a great guy. He's a great guy to pick his brain in. He's a smart guy, and you know, just a good overall person to add to your network. So, Michael, let's you know, keep this going, and then, like I said, let's get back on here soon.
Appreciate it. Good.